Was the United States actually founded as a Christian nation? It's honestly one of the most fiercely debated questions in all of American history, and the debate shows no signs of settling down. Some Americans argue passionately that Christianity fundamentally shaped the country's laws, core values, and national identity from the very beginning of the Republic. Others argue just as passionately that the founders intentionally created a secular government that was deliberately separate from religion and religious authority. So we're asking a question that doesn't have an easy answer. Are America's Christian foundations historical reality based on evidence? Or are they a modern myth that serves contemporary political purposes? This debate is about way more than just historical accuracy or getting the facts right about the 1700s. It directly influences contemporary conversations about fundamental issues, national identity and what it means to be American, political debates about laws and policies, religious freedom and how it should work in practice, and education and culture wars about what gets taught in schools. How Americans understand the nation's origins often powerfully shapes how they imagine its future and what direction it should take. These aren't just academic historical questions, they're live political and cultural battles. So the fundamental question becomes, what did America's founders, the people who wrote the Constitution and created our system of government, actually believe about religion and government? What was their intent? Because that matters for how we interpret their work today. Many early European settlers who came to North America in the 1600s and early 1700s were seeking religious freedom to practice their faith without persecution. Though it's important to note that many also came for economic opportunity and had mixed motivations. Churches became absolutely central parts of colonial life, especially in New England communities that were heavily influenced by Protestant Christianity and Puritan values. Biblical language and Christian moral ideas shaped many aspects of colonial society: laws, social norms, education, family structure. Christianity was the default assumption for most colonists. Psalm 33:12 says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord," which colonists quoted frequently. So we have to ask, did this widespread Christianity across the colonies automatically make them a Christian nation in any meaningful sense? Or was colonial Christianity more about individual belief and community practice than about creating explicitly Christian government? Because those are actually different things with different implications. Here's what's crucial to understand. The United States Constitution, drafted in 1787, does not establish Christianity or any religion as an official national religion. It doesn't mention God, Jesus, or Christianity at all. The First Amendment, added in 1791, specifically limits government involvement in religion. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's explicit separation of church and state at the federal level. Some individual founders like Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry were deeply religious Christians whose faith shaped their worldview. Others like Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin were more influenced by Enlightenment philosophy, reason, and deism than by Orthodox Christianity. So did the founders collectively intend to create a Christian government based on biblical principles? Or did they intend to create a government that protects religious freedom for everyone, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and non-believers alike, without favoring any particular faith? The documents themselves suggest the latter, but the debate continues because people read different meanings into the founders' choices. Even without establishing Christianity as an official national religion, Christian faith and values heavily influenced American culture throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. That influence appeared constantly and visibly in public speeches by presidents and politicians who quoted scripture, in moral discussions about slavery, temperance, and social reform that used biblical language, in education systems where schools often included religious instruction, and in community traditions where church attendance was socially expected. References to God became increasingly common in political rhetoric and national ceremonies. Though, interestingly, many of those additions, like "under God" in the pledge, came much later in the 1950s. Proverbs 14:34 says, "Righteousness exalts a nation," which leaders quoted when arguing for moral reforms. So we're forced to ask, can a nation legitimately be culturally Christian, with Christian values, symbols, and language dominating public life, while remaining politically and legally secular with no official state religion? Is that combination coherent, or does it create an impossible tension? Because that's arguably what America has been: culturally Christian, but constitutionally secular. America's constitutional system allowed multiple religious traditions to grow and practice openly without government interference or establishment. This created an environment where Christianity actually expanded dramatically and became even more influential than in countries with official state churches, because it was voluntary and competitive rather than state-imposed. But this freedom also meant other faiths could grow, and non-religious worldviews could exist publicly. Supporters of strict separation between church and state argue this arrangement actually protected religion from government control and corruption, keeping faith pure. Others believe that this separation gradually reduced Christianity's legitimate public influence and pushed it to the margins of society. Does constitutional separation of church and state genuinely protect faith from government interference and control? Or does it inevitably weaken religion's role in shaping society by making faith purely private? Both effects might be happening, making this a genuine trade-off rather than a clear win for either side. Today, the phrase Christian nation carries enormous political and cultural weight and meaning that goes way beyond historical accuracy. Some Americans genuinely believe the country should consciously return to what they see as its authentic Christian roots, putting Christian values back at the center of public life, law, and policy. Others argue strongly that national identity should remain inclusive and religiously neutral, not privileging Christianity over other beliefs. Matthew 22:39 commands, "Love your neighbor as yourself," which both sides quote. One arguing Christian values serve everyone, the other arguing neutrality shows love to all. So we have to ask honestly, is this debate really about accurately understanding history and what the founders intended? Or is it primarily about the future direction of America, using competing historical narratives to justify different visions of what the country should become? Because historical arguments often serve present purposes, and this debate seems to be more about contemporary politics than 18th century facts. Historical interpretation is rarely simple or straightforward, especially with something as complex as American founding. America's actual story includes multiple elements that are all historically true. Significant Christian influence on culture and many founders' beliefs, crucial Enlightenment ideas about reason and natural rights that shaped the Constitution, increasing religious diversity from the beginning, and ongoing debates about freedom, morality, and what values should guide the nation. Different groups emphasize different parts of that complex history depending on their values and goals. So, can a nation legitimately have Christian foundations, genuine historical roots in Christian culture and values, without being exclusively or officially Christian in its government and law? Can you acknowledge Christian influence while also recognizing other influences and maintaining religious freedom for all? That seems like the most historically accurate position, but it doesn't satisfy people on either extreme of the debate who want simpler narratives. Let me leave you with some challenging questions. Was America genuinely founded as a Christian nation with Christian government? As a purely secular republic with no religious foundation? Or as something more complex that includes both elements? How much should historical founding principles, whatever they were, actually shape modern public life 2.5 centuries later in a very different society? And what role should religion continue to play in defining American identity in the 21st century as the country becomes more diverse? These questions don't have answers everyone will agree on. The question of America's Christian foundations may honestly never have a simple answer that satisfies everyone, because the historical reality is genuinely complex. The nation was powerfully shaped by both sincere religious belief among many founders and citizens, and by constitutional limits on religious power that created official government neutrality. Understanding that complexity and tension rather than forcing simple narratives may be absolutely essential to understanding America itself. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. Subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and join us in the search for truth.